So good morning everyone. I am Mr. Santiago Eliap. For today we'll be discussing about the behavioral intervention plan, and I will be discussing about the functional behavior assessment. So what is functional behavior assessment? Functional behavior assessment targets specific behavior, then looks objectively at the conditions surrounding the behavior. All this behavior continues because the individual either gets something they like from this behavior or they escape something they dislike. So, this specific behavior happens when or occurs when something they like are happening from this kind of behavior, or they are escaping something they dislike. So they are occurring this kind of behavior. So who has the rights on this FBA? Those who have the rights on FBA are those mandated by the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or the IDEA, which assesses the behavioral problem of a student with disabilities. This assessment is taken before the child is transferred to the disciplinary actions in the school. Next, it addresses when the student's behavioral problems are most likely to occur, what environment this behavior occurs, and why the disruptive behavior occurs. So these are some of the questions which will be answered on the functional behavioral assessment, on when the student's behavioral problems are most likely to occur, on what environment does this behavior occurs, and why does this disruptive behavior occurs. So these are the helping system on the assessment of this FBA. So during the assessment, these are some of the steps in assessing the disruptive behavior of a student, and these are the ones involved. First, step 1 is establishing a team. A multidisciplinary team is established to provide a variety of perspective about the interfering behavior that particular learners with a disability exhibit. Members of the team should include all individuals who have observed the interfering behavior demonstrated by the learner over an extended period of time. So, who are involved? The persons involved in this establishing of the teams are the learner's teachers, which are the special education or general education teachers. These teachers who are members of the team should be from classes where the interfering behavior occurs. Also, it includes any related service personnel, speech-language pathologists, occupational therapists, behavioral therapists, psychologists, and etc. Also includes paraprofessionals that work directly with the learner. These individuals often have extended interactions with learners and may spend the most time with them on a daily basis. And lastly, and the most important, are the learner's parents. Parents should be included because they are most knowledgeable about their child's behavior across settings and situations. So the first one involved are the learner's teacher. The learner's teacher are the one who can easily monitor and guide and give access on how the students behave in a certain setting. It also includes those in home or those they have hired in order to help the student, which are some of these are the speech language pathologist, occupational therapist, behavioral therapist, or the psychologist, which may have some information about the student or the student's behavior or the student's history record. It also includes the paraprofessional that works directly with the learners. And lastly are the learner's parents, which are the most knowledgeable about their child's behavior across settings and situations. So the second one is identifying the interfering behavior. In this step, members of the multidisciplinary team identify the interfering behavior that will serve as the target of the assessment and intervention strategies. So, in this step, they are going to identify what are the disruptive behaviors that occur on a certain student or learner, so they can have the intervention strategies. Interfering behavior into disruptive or repetitive behaviors that interfere with optimal development, learning, and or achievement. So what they are going to identify are those behavior that can affect their optimal development, learning, achievement, social social and academic achievements. So in this identifying of the interfering behavior, this includes that the following this includes the following questions. This includes the following questions that may be helpful when deciding which behavior should be the target for the intervention. Is the behavior dangerous to the learner or others? Does this behavior interfere with learning, academically and socially? Does this behavior interfere with socialization or acceptance from peers? And is this behavior disruptive or intense on a frequent basis? So, after identifying and having these um, assumed questions, the team determines how long the behavior has been interfering with the learner's development and learning, and if the behavior involves aggression or damage to properties, and if the behavior might be the result of environmental factors like lighting, noise level, for example, and if the interfering behavior might occur because learners are being asked to demonstrate a skill that they cannot perform. For example, does the learner not know how to use skills needed in a particular setting or activity, or is the learner able to use needed skills but not consistently? So, as I have mentioned earlier, that this behavioral assessment occurs on the student's disruptive behavior if something they want to escape or dislike or something they want. So, this includes if the learners are example or is if the learners are being asked to demonstrate a skill, they will show their disruptive behavior because they want to escape something. Also includes other behaviors that the learner exhibits immediately before the behavior occurs and what happens immediately after the interfering behavior occurs. These are the antecedents and the consequences of the disruptive behavior of a student. So lastly is the collecting of baseline data. Step 3 focuses on collecting data from multiple sources to better understand the interfering behavior prior to designing and implementing an intervention strategy. Although collecting baseline data is an essential feature of FBA, data collection is important throughout the FBA process because it helps those teachers and practitioners define the behavior, record what the learner is currently doing, and evaluate the outcome of the intervention plans. So, prior to designing and implementing interventions, teachers and practitioners uses indirect assessment methods that includes reviewing previous and current records. The purpose of this record review is to gain insights into the learner's current behavior by looking at previous reports or assessment that might include medical reports, psychological evaluations, speech and or occupational therapy assessments, educational testing, which was discussed from the first and second group, which is the IEP and the IFSP, incident reports, disciplinary action reports, and anecdotal reports. It also includes the conducting of formal and informal interviews with school staff, family members, and the learners. Team members, particularly the FBA coordinator, conduct both informal and formal interviews to gather information about the behavior from multiple perspectives. At least one of the following tools is used during this process, which are the FAST or the Functional Assessment Screening Tool and the PBQ or the Problem Behavioral Questionnaire. This tool is used to determine the potential cause of the behavior, and this questionnaire is used to determine the potential function of the behavior. That would be all on my part, and thank you.